your mom found out. Guess that we just really had the thunder. Ain't nobody else that I be under. Beautiful, beautiful life right now. Beautiful, beautiful night right now. No, no, no. Hey, beautiful, 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 beautiful angel. Love your imperfections, every anger. Tomorrow comes and goes before you know. So I just had to let you know.
Oh my God, where did the time go? I wish the hours would go slow. How is it 6 a.m.? Your touch is heaven. Beautiful, beautiful sight right now. Beautiful, beautiful life right now. Got the angels saying ooh ah right now. Like ooh ah. And this is why we got to touch. Sometimes the words are not enough. Pain to leave a golden kiss. Honey dripping from your lips. I thank God in my lucky stars. Darling, don't you know what you are? Yeah, baby, you are. Yeah, baby.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful angel. Love your imperfections, every anger. Tomorrow comes and goes before you know. I just had to let you know. The way that Gucci look on you, amazing. And nothing can compare the way you make it. Tomorrow comes and goes before you know. So I just had to let you know. I just had to let you know. Swear to God, you beautiful. Yeah.
Thought I could leave you, 'cause I felt my heart numbing. It hit so deep, I closed my eyes and I just took off running. I turned around and saw the look on your face. So I stay. But I don't need you, and you should know that, baby. It'd take a miracle for you to really try and change me. Then I felt sorry for the look on your face. So I stay. So I stay. So I stay. You wanna leave her, don't wanna hurt nobody. I don't believe a single word you say that you're sorry. Why can't I say no to the look on your face? I just stay. So I stay.
to the Ladies Lounge.
Check it out.
So you don't understand us? That's just sad. Come into the Ladies Lounge. You might just learn a thing or two. Women issues, women solutions, and women wisdom. The Ladies Lounge.
Let's go.
On Mega 102.1.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Mega 102.1 FM for those persons who are streaming on a 91.7 frequency, or whether you're listening online, on the Radio On Me Listen Shoutcast, or maybe MyTuner radio app. We welcome you once again to the evening program that you always look forward to, the Ladies Lounge, where we feature a lot of different topics and issues, something that you might be thinking about, you'd love to be educated on. And we're always here to share information. And this evening, our topic that we'd love to discuss and bring some more awareness to you is gender, binary, non-binary. And for us this evening, we have on the panel for the ladies, we have Cassia, no stranger, especially the folks in Essequibo. And we also have Christine, and our guest today, Mr. Joel Simpson, founder of SASOD, Society Against Sexual Orientation Discrimination. Good evening, everyone. How are you all doing?
Great. Happy to be here.
We're good. We're good.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Sounds great. I love the energy already because, this is a program filled with lots of vibes and energy. And of course, we're sponsored by Juve, and that's where we get some of our energy from. So I want to get straight into it because, we're always so anxious to share our thoughts as well. And I think with this topic this evening, it's more of we're also we're curious, we want to know, and we might be asking questions that our listeners out there might be asking as well. Oh, and let's just welcome Riza Khan. She's here. She's a psychologist, and she's also one of our guests for this evening. So great to have everyone here. We have moral support, Philip. He never likes for us to call his name, but thanks so much,
Studio
Philip.
audience.
Yeah, and he brings the serenity to everything, especially if we're nervous and stuff, So he does that for us. He gets us calm and ready. Isn't that so, Cassia?
Definitely, for sure.
All right, so I want for us to discuss a little bit on gender identity and what's our definition of gender identity. I mean, we have, so many parts and definitions, and even for people out there, they might be curious now. When we're termed with this or asked this question, how do we address it? How do we handle it when someone asks you about gender identity?
Well, let's backtrack a little bit and talk about gender and distinguish gender from sex, which people think are synonymous terms. So, gender is a social construction. That's the first thing we need to appreciate that. It's a broad term that could mean a lot of things. It could refer to sexuality. It could refer to issues of identity, gender identity, sexual orientation, sexual identity, and so on. But at the root of it, it's a social construction. And that simply means that society and the society that you live in have certain kinds of norms, certain kinds of cultural norms, which they think has bearings on whether certain behaviors, certain types of expression are male or female, masculine or feminine, as the case might be. Now, it's important to distinguish that from sex. And when we're not talking about sexual intercourse, we're actually talking about sex assigned at birth, anatomy.
Yes.
So whether you're born with male or female genitalia, which makes you male or female as the case might be, or a combination thereof.
Right.
So you could be intersex,
Right.
right? So even the category of sex assigned at birth, anatomical sex, is not binary. Nothing is really binary. So we start to answer the theme question
We're loving the conversation already.
very early.
Yeah.
And gender, on the other hand, is not about your organs. It's not about your chromosomes or your hormones. It's not anything biological or medical. It's just determined by social norms.
Yeah.
For me, that blew past me because I think, like many other people, very ignorant of that. And I think for me, gender, my definition, and this is personal, my definition of gender has evolved with knowledge, with exposure, with interaction.
Right.
And before, gender for me, and I don't know many other people, it might be when you were born, you're a boy or you're a girl. You get
Right.
a pink blanket and you get a blue blanket. But over time, going away, studying different things, for me in my head, I brought it down to three things. And I didn't know that gender and sex are different. I thought gender could be anatomy. It could be mental, like how you feel you are if you're a boy but you identify as a girl. And it could be societal script, what we follow. You're
Right.
a boy, you play baseball or cricket. You're a girl, you play
Wear
with
a
dolls,
tutu.
and
Yeah.
you can't climb a tree.
Yeah. Well, Cassie, like I said, when we opened that, gender, in a broad sense, you could use it as a kind of all-encompassing category. Like when people talk about gender studies,
Right.
you could use the term gender to mean sex, sexuality, sexual orientation, gender identity, and so on. But when you're using the term in a very specific way, like when you say what is gender, or you want to extrapolate more specifically and say what is gender identity and so on, I think it's very important to make that distinction between biological sex and sex assigned at birth. And in Guyana, we use the two terms interchangeably, which is technically inaccurate. And we do it all the time on official documents. So, I mean, anybody have the ID card on you? I don't know if it says sex or gender on it.
It says sex,
And
male
it
or
says,
female.
it says
Yeah.
sex.
So for me, I have the F, which which represents female, and for, I guess,
Right. Well, that's also interesting because if the responses are male or female, those are actually categories of biological classification, but the category gender there is the social category, as opposed to boy or man, girl or woman. So we model and we confuse all of these things, and like Cassia, it took education later in life to actually learn all of this. University education, exposure to gender studies at university, and so on.
And I am still very much confused, and a lot of it, I don't know how many people, and I mean, I don't know how many people look at like RuPaul's Drag Race. I mean, it's entertainment, but I also learned a lot about how identity is formed and how it differs from person to person sometimes, or experience. So for me, it is still a lot. And I'm still learning all the time to understand it.
Right.
I'm just going to say something just because I know Joel still has the original question to ask, which was gender conformity. I think that was the...
Identity,
that was the first one, right? So how, and this is how it was taught to me, Cassie, in the sense of, I did a gender, sexuality, and society course when I went to York by mistake, and it was like one of the best courses I could have done. And how gender was explained to me is similar. It's a social construct. Think of it as a box that we are put into. And so gender is seen as either boy or girl. You're either like, you don't really have the gender normative things. Like you said, the stereotypes that are attached to us. And it will take place in the sense of how we dress, how we speak, how we walk, these things are all kind of judged. But once you don't fit, think of it as a box. So like the world we kind of live in is most of the time is a heteronormative, heterosexual.
It's gender, whatever. When you identify, I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah.
I'm not the gender specialist for sure. But I have heard of it, but no. So it's very simplistic. You fit in this box. You're either going to be boy or girl. You're going to act a certain way, or you're not going to act a certain way. That is conforming societally, and it gets very interesting when you look at. We think of like most of the world as understanding what a boy is and what a girl is, but there's certain cultures, even in what we deem some of the more homophobic countries, that, like in Afghanistan, there's a whole different understanding of what a female and a male is. Like in Afghanistan, if the closest male to the family dies, a young girl actually has to cut her hair off and conform to do the masculine things in the family, and the same, and then you have persons in like other parts of Afghanistan that what they call, oh my God, I forget what you call them. They're boys, basically young men who are taught to dance and entertain people, but it's not sexualized, it's not prostitution, there's nothing gay about it, and they don't, I mean, I'm certain there are some pedophilic persons that will find a way to sexualize them in that regard, but it is seen as entertainment. And they don't see themselves as gay, they don't see themselves as dragging. That's not even it. It's a cultural and traditional form of entertainment, and it has nothing to do with gender or sexuality.
Like Joel had mentioned too, it could be a form of culture, like, in terms of how we react or how we present ourselves. But then still in the end of the day, they're the two stereotypical identities. But now, as we're in this modern world, people are saying maybe there are so many different identities and they're probably stretched out. And how do we identify each one? And do we address people, specifically? Even with application forms now, when you're there, you're signing up, there's a box basically to tick for other. Yeah. And
right.
So
I think that's important. I think if we go away with nothing else from this program, we should learn that sex, sexuality, gender, nothing is a binary. While they might be predominant or majority types of identities or personas, as the case might be. So cisgender is the term that came up, right? As an opposite of transgender. So somebody whose biological sex or sex assigned at birth matches their gender identity, how they view their gender. Right. So you're born biologically female, and you identify as a woman. Cisgender.
Yeah.
Yeah, the outside matches the,
The
inside.
The outside matches
Yeah.
the inside, more or less. Okay, that's a nice simple way to put it.
So
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
you have cis men and cis women because they identify exactly according to their biological
Anatomy, right.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So in essence, the opposite of being transgender.
Trans.
And to clarify, trans means in a decisive sentence. Can we do that? Can like you identify what trans means?
Well,
For
you-
me, trans just means identity
Trans?
different from exterior.
Well, trans would be, I think,
You can yes.
for me, I would say, well, because people use the general term trans, but there's transgender, and well, my understanding when I did that course, there's transgender and transsexual, and so, and the only division I know for transsexual from transgender, and Joel could probably confirm this, is post-op and pre-op, basically. And so when we say trans, it's basically what Joel said. It's some persons who are not conforming, if we have to use the bunny ears, not conforming to their biological
Anatomy.
Right.
And by saying trans, because they can still be transgendered, or they can be transsexual, or they could just be questioning.
Right.
Or not.
So in essence, so in essence,
Transgender who transitions to transsexual.
yeah. So the term transgender is basically used like an umbrella term
Okay.
for all the non-binary, non-cisgender types of identities.
Okay.
So we could talk about transsexuals, drag queens, genderqueer, and these things are evolving, and people are finding different ways to describe themselves.
I think that's for me. I find that to be very important and very like hit the nail on the head in the sense that it has changed. I think if we talk to our parents, depending on where they grew up or what they were exposed to versus now, like I wouldn't think my parents who were brought up in a society and in a very certain countryside, you'd say, when they go to Times Square now, there's everything. I mean, and the thing about it is that I find even in pop, like Prince, who's androgynous, you know, it has evolved. And like, I mean, my parents and people of that era and stuff like that, they love John Travolta, they love Michael Jackson, and clothes was really tight. Things started to blur. Girls at a certain period of time weren't allowed to wear pants. Guys weren't allowed to wear earrings.
And the funny thing is, clothes doesn't have gender. Clothes does not have gender. So when people say,
Now,
well,
right.
well, it never had a gender, but like Joel said, from beginning, everybody assigned, well, the boys can wear the pants and the girls have, but clothes never had gender. Yeah.
I think for me, I think why clothes has or have had for some people gender, it's what we were taught to have. I mean, and it's also perpetuated in cartoons we looked at and things we'd see.
Like when you see them blowing the bagpipes and this
The Scottish men with their
And that's not a skirt, that's a kilt.
yeah, right, good. And then
So-
that definition comes in to differentiate a skirt from
From
a
a
kilt.
kilt.
Right. So I think clothes have been gendered by society, and it will vary from society to society. So in certain parts of Africa and so on, people wear dresses and that kind of things, and that we would
Maasai people in
right,
Africa
which
they
are
wear dresses.
yeah, which are for men,
Yeah.
and that would not be acceptable to wear in maybe the Western
Right.
countries, the Western Hemisphere. And so on. So I think clothing has been gendered by society, and it changes over time, like you've rightfully said, and it changes across cultures.
Yeah.
And even right now in different parts of the world, like a kilt is practically what Guyanese would call a wrap skirt. But in that part of the world, that's acceptable as masculine dress, and even
And traditional dress as well, in the sense of like you wear
Braveheart
kilts
for
for weddings. Like when you get
Right.
married, you're actually, if you're a Scottish man,
And they
you're
usually would
going
have
to
a
probably
parade.
wear
They usually have a parade when they
of
have the
multiple
wedding,
men
yeah.
having these skirts on, kilts on, right?
And for me, the first time I really saw like a guy in a kilt was Braveheart, which is one of the most masculine movies you could think. So in my head, I was like, why is he wearing a skirt? But it's not a skirt, it's a kilt. And
Right.
you go back to the culture of it and understanding where it originated from.
I think people think as long as it's open bottom, it's a skirt. You know?
Yeah. I think we also have to make note of that when we're talking about, like Joel said, clothing has been gendered, because we seem to forget back in the day it was unladylike for women to wear pants, right? It was unladylike. So we were definitely conforming to gender expectations, right, in that regard. Because, I think it was, oh my goodness, Katharine Hepburn, not Audrey, like the model, Katharine was a very good writer and actress as well, but she was like, criticized for wearing pants and being a nudist and not conforming and having relationships with women and just being not very nonchalant to what was normative of a woman in like the 50s and stuff like that. So that's an example of some people who have understood that we should not be stuck in this box, because it's and I talked about the box, because why is it, and especially when we take this conversation a little deeper in the sense of in Guyana and other countries, why we have a problem with, for example, LGBTQ community or trans persons, is that they don't fit in that box. That society has said we're supposed to be in this box. So even if someone is a cisgendered male who identifies as a gay man, but as soon as he acts a certain way that is not within that box, he's then outside of the box automatically and chastised for that and discriminated because of that. But all he did was have like one single thing that wasn't in that box of, heteronormative or not being white, like that. And when we just studied in Canada, that was considered inside the box. Male, white, privileged, heterosexual, that kind of thing. So we definitely need to start to understand, what is Guyana's box? What have we normalized?
Yeah. I think that's the point that Christine was making, that clothes are not gendered in the sense that there's no biological, medical, or scientific basis why girls shouldn't wear pants, or why men can't wear skirts or dresses and so on. It's just all these rules have all been come up by society, and society polices these rules based on these cultural norms.
Yeah, and if to go a little deeper than the conversation Rice was just having, and we're talking about people and the way they identify with their sexuality, and it goes to say, and I think a lot of people think that you could be taught how to be gay, you can be influenced into being gay, or it can be pushed onto people to be gay. And there's a difference with being bi-curious and knowing for a fact that I was misgendered from birth, and I associate myself with I was gendered as a man, but I know that I'm a woman, or I was gendered as a woman, but I know that I'm a man. Big difference. And I think for people who are bi-curious, and it happens, you might not be sure about your sexuality, you might not be sure about
the cues.
the key, right? And you might be like, oh, she's attractive. I might be a girl that looks at a girl and be like, oh, she's attractive, and the guys might feel the same way because they're not quite sure yet where they fit in. But I don't like the term of people thinking that it's something that you can make someone become. I don't understand how you. And someone made a statement on Facebook the other day saying that y'all don't force the gay lifestyle on our kids. And I went on to the comment and I was like, when I was really young, probably 14 or something like that, I attended my first gay parade on accident because we were in London, and those people have been way ahead of us a long time now. But it was by accident, and I loved it because I saw all of these men and they had on the leather stuff and they were dancing, and the parade was like, exciting. And I was like, when I left that parade, however, I didn't think I needed to go and find a girl.
Right.
I didn't think
You didn't catch it.
right? I didn't think for some reason, oh my God, am I really a girl or am I a boy? And should I start liking, like it didn't affect me in any way. I just enjoyed what I was seeing because I was like, wow, these people are really,
Because you want to say something.
No, I have again questions. Because some people, like you're saying, it's something contagious. It's not, because some people might think, oh, it's just a trendy thing. It's just a trendy thing to be bisexual, to be transgender, to be androgynous, whatever. And it's not. It's not trendy. These are real people with real identities and how they identify. But okay, I have a question. Since we say, okay, people are born and they're not this or boy or girl, can we agree or not to say that there are certain characteristics that identify as female and certain characteristics that identify as male? say, I don't know if a girl might be a little bit more. Do you understand my question?
I
Does
think
that
I
make
understand
sense?
the question,
Yeah.
but
But I
let
think
me.
those are perpetrated by again, the society. I think those are perpetrated even at birth by society, because if the first thing that happens in your life is as soon as you're born and you go to the nursery, you're wrapped in a pink cloth, that already kind of starts setting the clock from there, right?
But regardless of that, you could look sometimes and observe kids who really are unaware of gender or anything. And you could see characteristics that are tender. A girl might be a little more
Rough.
yeah. Or a girl might be a little more timid, whereas boys might be rambunctious.
But
because
maybe that came about from
Upbringing.
identifying
What you mean?
the toys you play with and the clothing you wear in terms of,
What Cassie is saying is more than. I think I think what Cassie is saying is more than beyond what you play with and beyond
It's
what
inner.
you're given to wear. It's more about the characteristics
so how you feel.
no how character. It's more of how you behave, how you interact, how you move around.
It's like if you
within-
line up 10 boys in a room, just saying, 8 out of the 10 will be rambunctious and want to run up the walls. Put 10 little girls in a room, most of them gonna be sitting down reading or coloring. I mean, I observed this with my nephew.
And that's because of how they're raised, right?
But
Definitely. But to get your original question about birth and how do you classify people at birth?
right, because there's something called babies, which is they don't use pronouns
or sex.
or sex.
Yeah.
They use they, their, them. They don't classify them. And I was looking at a program and they had 2 kids. They did not reveal the gender, but only the parents and their nanny knows the gender. And their names are unisex, so you can't say or Riley or Jordan or
Right.
Robin or whatever. And they dress them and you really cannot tell. They both had short hairs. You can't tell which is a girl. You can't tell which is a boy.
But when you looked at them, though, then they look at one
They look
sex?
like boys.
Okay, they look like
they
boys.
look like, to me, they looked like boys.
Right.
Yeah.
What
Because at
society
that
would
age
consider
and,
boys.
and you're not through puberty yet, so you won't start your body.
They were
Doesn't start
4.
That.
They're 4, so they're little.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Right.
can't tell. From
So I could understand the parents' perspective where that comes from completely, because at the time of birth, all you generally know is
Anatomy?
You don't even know biological sex, because biological sex is made up of anatomy, chromosomes, and hormones. So unless you do all of those kinds of tests, that's why I use the term sex assigned at birth, because you're just assigning sex based on anatomy.
On the
right?
external.
On the external as well.
organs.
Right.
So somebody could be assigned male or female at birth and very well be intersex and not
Right.
discover that until later when they
When they
start
do
doing
different,
chromosomal tests and the kind of thing.
Realize
It's
that
a,
they're not developing breasts.
Right.
But they have an external, what looks like an external vagina.
right.
Yeah.
Our classic global case, Caster Semenya, the South African runner, after they did the chromosomal test, higher levels of testosterone than a woman would have and all of that kind of thing and so on.
hair in place. I'm like, what is the hair growing there? And I'm like, and why do I burn fat so fast? But that's all because I have a high level of
and let me get that
in
part.
my
the
body.
boy. That part, please.
But that's with the genetics, right?
I think we all want that kind of testosterone.
For sure.
You got it, Joel.
The fat burning one.
I just want to add to what Cassie, from a scientific psychological standpoint, because tests have done. Psychometric tests have been done. Research has been done on all these things. And it's very hard because we all agree that society and our parenting styles and stuff will start to form our child's identity from within a few weeks of birth, basically, if not from the get-go. Like I said, when you wrap them in a pink cloth, that's it. It's already started. But the tests have been done to kind of find, sterilize the environment to see,
make it fully
would
neutral.
would a girl do
gravitate
X,
to.
would a boy do X?
Okay.
But it's very hard because you still have...
Outside.
It's harder to control.
Yeah.
They're gonna watch TV at some point, unless you're gonna put them in a cave
Or a
and
padded
then-
room.
Then that will
like-
have a different result because being locked away and all of that too.
Yeah,
and
we'll have their own
civilization,
mental health.
everything. Yeah,
their own social issues.
right.
I was guilty of that because I was guilty of that because when I had Alyssa, I was like, because she looks like her dad so much, I was like, oh, you look like a boy. I need to pierce your ears because everybody thinks you're a boy. So, right. So for me as a parent, automatically, even at that age, I don't know what she's going to
Look like
identify as, but I already was like, you're a girl because you have everything for a girl, and you're looking like your dad so much. So I need to pierce your ears so everybody's gonna know
it's the little girl.
And this is and this is an example how Christine became like a conforming, like she's conforming to the society.
Societal expectations.
And really, if you think about it, Christine, would you have thought of that if people weren't making comments that your child looked like a boy? No. That's insane.
I remember sharing probably with some of the ladies right in here on a previous program or something. My daughter, the smallest one, Jivantika, she wrapped up. I had it in my style. She's in pink dress, blanket, and everything. And then somebody comes up and say, "Your son is cute." Her ears weren't pierced, and but we do this thing for the Hindu rites where we would shave the hair off, right? We call it the mundan. So she had that ceremony done, and she's a little bald head girl rolling around in a dress.
Maybe you should applaud that person.
Yeah, I didn't assume automatically that pink means girl.
And I said, thank you, right? So that was, I never get upset because I know babies when they're small, you can't really tell.
Right.
You could put a boy in a dress and the cutest daughter, or vice versa, and like your son is handsome.
That's something I like. You're talking about that, and I thought about something like Adele. Adele has a son, but there was a bunch of like magazines and stuff because he went to outings dressed as Elsa and Anna, like
He loves Frozen. See your rises like, oh.
But when asked, she did say that he thinks he's a girl, but she's okay with it.
Oh, that's fine.
But my thing is, good for you. But then what happens when he goes out there and there are other little boys who have an idea of what little boys should look like? For me as a parent, and he's little, he's probably in his stroller, like probably 4 or 5. For me as a parent, I don't think I would let him go out in a dress at that age because I don't think he's equipped to educate and to defend himself.
Right.
So
Because it might hurt more than it might help him. Because it could make him crumble and be like, let me never show my real self because everybody will hurt me or be mean to me. Or it could be like, hey, this is me. Because some kids are resilient, some are not.
it's a bit of a catch 2020. I hear your instinct, your paternal
Mama bear.
to protect a child from
Yeah, see, I gonna
from
be ending
society,
up showing up at the school
from
and beating
transphobia
somebody.
and all of that and so on. But at the
down,
same
Polly.
time, I think if at that age, this child clearly identifies with certain kind of gendered persona, clothing, and that kind of thing, ideally, that child should be allowed to express their gender identity. It's going to be better and right. I could speak to this for their mental health, their psychological health and well-being, because a lot of people who are forced by society, family, religion, all of these external forces to suppress that, really struggle with mental health issues late in life.
Feeling unwelcomed, unaccepted, rejected.
But at just 4 years old, can the child tell if they're feeling differently from on the inside from how they appear on the outside?
As a parent, and this goes for both of my girls, so my youngest, she's like, and I wanted to talk about this when we were talking about what we exposed them to. Obviously, she had like, okay, well, we say she's a girl.
Right.
You're such a pretty girl, XYZ, the normal way we talk, and she has her toys and whatever. But we never really said, well, you can't play with this, or you can't play with that, or that's a boy toy, or that. She has trucks, she has balls, she has, if she sees it, she likes it, we would buy it for her, we would get it for her. So she has toys that are well, doesn't have a gender, right, for me. But now she's all about, oh, mommy, I want to be a princess. I want to be a princess. I'm such a pretty girl. I'm a pretty princess.
So
things
this
like
is
that.
what she
so
chooses.
she's already, even though she has...
Do you think that she was influenced because you said you're such a pretty girl?
No, well, perhaps because, yes, you say you're such a pretty...
But then what she's saying is that she didn't limit her to
I
the
didn't
toys,
limit her to
female
one
toys only.
set
She has
of
been
toys.
exposed.
Because-
Yes, I didn't limit her to just, the girl toys or the pink, or she was able to, but she gravitated naturally towards everything that was girly and
Feminine,
nevertheless.
But that might also be like a play school thing as well too. If she's in play school, they would have like you
Done.
might not be saying it, but the teacher might be like, no, get from there, as boy toys, right? So
it happens.
even because that's what I'm saying, factors external. That's why I said the research is hard because we can try and gender sterilize a setting for research,
how
but
realistic
the
would it be?
external is still gonna happen, the external factors. And I just want to make a comment because I feel like gynaes and so on who are listening and so on, I think what we need to kind of at least just throw out there, as much as people may or may not agree, and I don't even know how Joel feels about what I'm about to say, but if someone is identifying as a pretty princess or like
Self-identifying.
or like a child, like a 4-year-old is identifying as wants to wear a dress, I think what is also traumatizing for a child, whether they're told not to go to school or they go to school and they get the bullyism, is we don't have to always accept that that's it and that the child will be like this forever. It might just be, as they say, like, I don't really want to say passing phase, but if the child feels influenced or comforted, or maybe the teacher says, like things about Elsa, and maybe like he wants to be like his teacher or he feels a connection, something external is influencing. It doesn't necessarily mean if he's wearing dresses now, he's gonna wear a dress. And I think gynaes are so quick to be like, get off that dress, and it's like, calm down. The child just put on a dress. Like, he's not gonna go and do all these terrible things that you assume he's gonna do. Look, you need to be worrying about your child being a murderer, okay? Like, you need to worry about your child committing crimes, like real crimes.
I think Iris is very right. So something as simple as like, okay, some kind of characteristics that Elsa that a child, and we mentioned the child identifies with. It's what's driving that interest, and that does not necessarily mean that child will grow up to be a trans girl or a trans woman, or vice versa, as the case might be.
Has it have negative effects though on a child being exposed at a certain age to, look, I mean, bullying in general has had very, very bad. Of course, people. Yeah, I mean, if you were a chubby kid and then all of a sudden you become hot, you're a swan. I mean, if you were that's a term. It's true. Or if you were a chubby kid and at 14 you become anorexic because everybody else gets boyfriends and you don't. I mean, bullying does have negative effects.
Course.
I mean,
and I think what needs to be understood is I've had both clients who have been perpetrators of bullyism and the victims of bullyism, and they both actually have really similar, and I always talk about this, like when especially I talk about DV and so on, like the characteristics of a perpetrator, domestic violence, right? For the non-psychology people, domestic violence. The difference between a perpetrator and a victim is not really that far, right? And we always have a saying when I used to work in a shelter, we'd always say, be mindful that you heal now so you never become a perpetrator. And the same thing works in bullyism in the sense of the bully is only bullying because power has been taken away from that bully in some form of fashion. We have no idea, and that's why they say a lot of people who are homophobic are actually like gay themselves and are fighting their own internal battle, and they don't want to see it in front of them, so they try to cast it out because they can't be it. More help. And they're not brave enough to be it, or they're not able to, or they weren't raised to be it. And so a lot of times we see persons who are bullied or have bullied people are not far off on the mental health status in terms of they've both been exposed to stuff, they've both been bullied, power has been taken away, they've both been traumatized by somebody at some point in time.
I think a lot of the times bullying comes because of ignorance from small or grown people. There's adult bullying too. There's kids bullying too. People, you walk into an office and people could bully you in the slightest way. Workplace. Yeah, then you gotta be real straight and tell them how it is. But my fear is that if this happens to my kid, I would want them to be their authentic self, but I'm naturally a helicopter person, so I might hover. And like I said, I don't want to beat nobody. But I think the most I would equip a child with is to say, hey, don't make fun of me. Let me explain how this works.
This is me.
This is me. And I would try as much as I could to prolong it so that they could be a little older to be able to tell people what it is. Yeah.
So now that you've said that, how soon is too soon to allow your child to, act
think
accordingly?
that might
or
be everybody's choice. Every parent's
how
choice.
they feel?
Yeah, it goes. I guess.
But is it the parents' choice?
No. When I say parents' choice, I guess it depends. I think, and speaking as a parent, if I had a child that had that identity, wasn't sure about what they identify as, or were telling me that they were a different sex based on how they were gendered, then I would, and they were wanting to wear, let's just say it's a boy, and he wanted to wear. Okay, it's a girl, and she wanted to do all the boy stuff, and she wanted to cut her hair short, and she wanted to wear baseball caps and do all the boy things, and be. At that point, and if she was saying that I don't call me a girl, I am a boy, then I'm going to say, okay, boy.
Okay, boy.
Okay, boy. We're going in board box here now. Okay, boy. You know,
boy and girl.
right? I'm like, okay, boy. And then, because unlike Riza was saying, not because kids are giving off these characteristics or acting certain way means necessarily that's because sometimes they're just themselves probably being influenced by probably the house full of boys, and everything that is seen is boy related.
A lot of time, girls who are into sports and liming with the guys or grew up in their male cousins are called tomboy. Rise was called tomboy. Cassie, you were called tomboy.
I was called a tomboy. They're riding donkey and all kind of thing around the place.
Even I remember,
But I switched in and out my tomboy role. If we said there's a role, I knew when I wanted to be a tomboy, and I knew when I wanted to be a girl.
Same for me. Remember Nation days? We used to be
Yeah.
dribbling basketball. We were both
Even
on the
in
cricket
straight,
team. We going out there, we playing against school. And then for me, I used to be involved in cultural activities. I'd be dribbling on my ball down the road going home. Then you see me at
Dressed
some
up,
cultural
yeah.
show in a full out Indian and be like, this is the same tomboy dance. They're graceful expression, everything is like, but
I want to add something. So why don't we allow boys to have the same freedom? Like, why can't boys be able to do all the sports activities
as soon as the guy
then go
dances,
into drama?
People say, oh,
Right?
Bana
Why
dancing,
are girls
or you say he's
allowed?
gay. Like
Why-
if a guy dances.
Yeah, why are girls allowed to do all the things, but we
And they
limit?
applaud you, right? They applaud us.
Yeah.
They're a little bit, not like they're allowed, because they got some strict parents who be like, no, you ain't playing no sports, you better go and study your books.
Or play an
Or
instrument.
playing
But
an
you see,
instrument,
the whole
go play
studying
piano.
And
books.
don't play the drums, play the piano
Play
or the
the piano,
violin. if
even
you're a girl.
feminized
Yeah.
instruments
Instruments.
as well, right? So I think also it's not just in some people.
Playing the harp.
Like Christine was like, most girls are able to kind of transition between the two worlds, the two binaries that we've created. But you're right, the boys have a little bit less flexibility. But again, depends on the society.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
just in Guyana, we're less flexible. Like, for example, guys in Guyana can dance, but they're doing like breakdancing. Or maybe when they get older, they're learning to ballroom or something that's masculinized. Masculinized.
That's the word right here.
Dictionary now.
Anything else is considered fruity.
But you know, Riza,
But you see, this is something that I find very interesting, because straight men who are homophobic have no problem liming and hanging out and being around lesbians.
Oh, yeah.
They find it so appealing.
That's a whole other question.
Versus, right? So there is that also juxtaposition between girls can be a boy and still be whoever they want. They could choose.
The cis men live for the girl and girl
Yeah.
action, but
And I
as
find that
soon as it's
there's
like,
a boy.
oh my god, the world is gonna end. I'm like, come on, you gotta like,
Let's clarify the cisgender straight men.
yeah, the cisgender straight men, straight men.
but you know the
Right.
thing where Riza was talking about the study and trying to get like maybe isolation, just having the male child, maybe liming with all the girls and to see how they would adapt. When she was saying that, I was making reference to George of the Jungle. When the movie, the recent one that came out, he was living with the apes and all of his features. And in biology, we say speciation. You adapt to your habitat, so you learn to live in that environment. So if a boy is living with females, girls all the time, learn all the traits, the habits, or whatever, maybe they could just adapt.
But then we can't say that because then we can't say that environment influences it to, like, I can't
To
say
that
that nature
extent.
versus nurture kind of thing.
And then for sure, the nature versus nurture is a century-long argument in psychology. And what we basically establish with most themes is that, especially even with disorders, when we look at mental health disorders, it is going to be a bit of both. It's going to be a bit of both because you're going to still have men, and maybe we could put out a call on like WhatsApp or Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and say, if you're a boy of a family of multiple girls, how did you feel about this question that was posed? Because there's going to be people, there have been research that has showed that if you have multiple sisters above, like you have 6 sisters above you and you're the first and last boy, there's a likelihood that you might be gay. And that's kind of feeding into your hypothesis. So we do have some biases when we're doing research on LGBTQ and identity and gender on whether, if you hypothesis, you're going to try and find the research for it. So you have to be very mindful of how we look at research on gender and stuff like that, because people are going to go and look for it.
Because in the end of the day, too, we're saying it's all about the chromosomes and the hormones and everything too.
Yeah.
So the level of hormones, would that determine? Even if you were in an environment with only maybe one guy with all the sisters?
So here's my conclusion about this whole nature versus nurture argument. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Quite frankly.
Okay,
It doesn't
that's a
matter.
good one.
It doesn't matter because even if it's a choice, people have freedom of choice. I could be Christian in 2010 and be Muslim in 2020. So if I am straight in 2010 and gay in 2020, what's your issue?
But that's it. Some people might think what you're born, that's not a choice. That's what you have to be.
I don't believe it's a choice.
Yeah,
Hear-
right.
hear what? I don't believe it's a choice. I don't believe
Right.
it's a choice.
Yeah.
But if you want to go down the road of the nature nurture argument, I don't think it matters when it comes to accepting people, respecting them, allowing people to express themselves freely, and claiming all the rights that everybody else has.
Right, right.
Because there are other things that we establish our choices.
Right.
Religion is a choice, but it's a very, very fundamental. Freedom of religion is a very fundamental human right that most people
Enjoy
respect.
and enjoy.
Right? And nobody challenges anybody if they change their religion and all of that and so on. You're allowed to do that. And that's and it's an important part of your personality. That is a choice. Nobody's going to debate that religion is not a choice. But why is it when it comes to sexuality and so on, it's a choice, it's a quote unquote choice which society must determine what's acceptable for somebody else.
I think the reason why it is why people feel it's a choice is because there's a physicality to it, and maybe it's learned that we think boys look this way and girls look this way, and it's a physicality thing. So maybe for certain people, like they would say, before your daughter got her ears pierced, they'd say little boy.
Little boy, yeah.
So for me, and this is generally how a human, if you put a 5-year-old and you put him in a classroom and who's your best friend? Oh, this boy named Ethan or this girl. So they know what you should look
You
like.
expect to see a certain kind of presentation.
Right.
But I don't think that's alone. These things are socioculturally influenced and determined, and our culture has many sources. So we have some religions which view these things as sinful, abomination, and all of that and so on. So many of us, if the census says 60% of the population is religious or something like that. So a significant number, I don't remember.
What is religious? That's another one.
That's another debate.
Your
That's
term
another
is
debate.
different. Yeah.
But people subscribe, and we can't deny that many religions that are popular, prominent in Guyana have a very conservative position when it comes to sexuality and gender, right? There are people who
Very adamant about
adamantly believe that it's only male and female, man and woman, and everything is a binary. Everything is one or the other. This intersex is transgender. All of this
And they
gray
also
area that
believe
we're talking about
the religions
doesn't exist.
Believe in the whole procreation and everything too. So
is this Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve?
Yes, that's ignorance.
That's a meme.
Because that's ignorance. Because the procreation, if we're gonna go down the road of talking about homosexuality and so on, the procreation argument is not relevant because people can procreate at all kinds of different permutations and so on. I know
save your body, get a surrogate.
all of that. I know lesbian and gay friends who are co-parenting in Jamaica, for instance. Like, you know,
and in Jamaica.
and anywhere in the world, like, you know, there's different permutations for procreation, which doesn't involve the nuclear family, right?
Yes. Or the traditional somebody gotta get pregnant.
Yeah, that too.
But we know that. Well, I guess it would depend on what we're deeming procreation. Is that what, like, in the sense of you, like, well,
Traditional.
if yes, I was gonna say hi, Joel. I was gonna use this example, but I mean, like me and a male must like our
Have to
organs
have
must
intimate- yeah.
touch. If that's what we're deeming procreation, then we're in a bit of a pickle there, because all those examples Joel used
Of birth,
is not
yeah.
exactly that traditional thing. But then how is it that straight people, heterosexual persons who do use surrogates are not chastised or criticized for procreating?
I mean, sometimes you,
And also 90% of the people who have sex across the globe are not having sex for procreation any longer. So why is it that they're not like chastised? You know, like,
Eyebrows and stuff going on in here.
okay, maybe not 90. I'm forgetting about the asexuals. So sorry, asexuals.
Yeah.
But you know, a large proportion, you know, and so we have to consider that as well. It's like,
So you've really
why
ju-
are we criticizing one batch and not the others? You know?
Right. You've really just exposed society's double standards, because the same religions that would view homosexuality, transgenderism, and so on as sin also view fornication as sin. But you know, there are many churches now that children born out of wedlock could be christened and all of that and so on. The church, what do you call it? The Latter-day Saints. They just decided that they're going to accept and christen children from LGBT parents, from LGBT homes, and things like that, and so on. And that applies to all of their churches around the world. So things are evolving, but I think Raisa just hit the nail on the head. Society really has these double standards.
And I agree with you when you say things are evolving. I mean, a lot of times, mostly, like, I would say a lot of things, laws were passed in America first before, you know, all the other countries. And perhaps that becomes a role model in terms of, you know, what others are deeming that it's acceptable and okay. For example, the controversial transgender bathroom laws.
Right.
You know, what about us here in Guyana? Would we eventually have something like that? And what resolutions would you?
I think because I was reading the transgendered bathroom, the where it's a half woman, half man, but it's merged.
Yes.
I don't think every state has them yet, because there's certain states that I think 6 or 8 states have them. I can't remember how many.
Yeah, the conservatives aren't about that life.
Yeah. First of all, the United States of America is not a model for when it comes to respect
They just
for
lost their abortion laws. Like,
LGBTQ issues, sexual and reproductive health and rights.
But it raises a good question.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel? Because so this was something. If you're a parent and you have a girl who is a teenager, right? But there is a boy who is burly and big, but he identifies as a girl. Would you be okay with him sharing the same bathroom as your 16-year-old or 14-year-old girl?
Because that's that.
How do you know that though?
Well, that's because we're not educating enough on. First of all, ain't no trans woman going Berlin and buffing out. And look, transgender women take care of themselves. Yes, they look good, better than some other women.
But what if he's
First of all,
not trans? He
but-
identifies, but isn't changing yet. Maybe
Well,
he
but
can't
then-
at home. I don't know.
Well, Cassie, I think you're asking the wrong question, because the good practice, quite frankly, because the good practice is to have gender-neutral bathrooms, single-stall gender-neutral bathrooms that everybody could go in and do the business by themselves. That is the good practice. Yes, single-stall, gender-neutral. Anybody could go into one little room
I got
with a
you,
toilet
got you.
Right,
and
yeah,
do
like,
that, and a
remember
mirror,
nations used to
and have a
have-
sink outside. Or whatever the case
boy
is,
and
there's
girl
no
washrooms.
there's no reason to have gender
bathroom on every floor.
washrooms.
Right, but that's a new thing now, in the sense that I mean, I went to college and you have co-ed floors and you
Yeah.
have floors that are full feminine or masculine, male or female. So I think this question wouldn't be all over the place if it was something that has been.
No, and that's because as we start to learn as a society. Part of our evolution is more education, better research, better scientific discovery, and we're learning. So now, as we accept transgender people, they're getting to finish high school. I know a trans woman who's graduating with her degree in sociology in November, and she's the first trans Guyanese woman who I know openly identifies as trans who's going to the University of Guyana. And this is 2019, and this is one person.
Were you not allowed to?
I don't think that's
I
the case.
think you're just discrimination.
because
like, how
it
can
was, yeah.
like okay,
She's
prime
just
example, that
comfortable.
question in the bathroom. How do you go to work or how do you go to study if you don't even have a place to pee, right? Or go to the bathroom, right? Like, so even simple things like that. And like you said, IDs, when you go to get your ID at UG, you have to show maybe a national ID to get them to print your ID. And you're showing an ID that says M, but you're presenting as a woman. Like, even these are the small, and like you spoke about the other. I have not seen any form yet that is other. Guyanese forms are so archaic. When you go NIS, they
in
want to
America,
know who
there's
your
loads.
mother. Yes, of course. In
Yeah,
America.
in America, there's
and Canada,
loads.
same thing. Oh
Yeah.
Lord, the options you have.
National-
But like the
We got
NIS, the NIS form is so archaic. They want to know who my mother is, what job she had. All of this is like, what if you're a grown person in your 50s, 60s, and so like exactly. What if you don't know your mother? So it's just all these things we're not considering. Like Joel said,
Yeah.
we have to consider. Like, for example, like I said, in nations
Just
when
copy
we were.
and paste on the internet and print it out, the farm. That's
Oh Lord! When we were.
They themselves don't even know what that is.
No, they won't understand what cisgendered male means, cis male. But like even, and rightfully so, it is a question that's happening because that is a good question in the
It
sense
is, it
of
definitely
if
is.
you are bucked up with someone who could, but like that's what I'm saying, we need to understand that if it is that you identify as a woman, you may or may not be attracted to women, even if you are born male.
I think what Cassie is saying is, what if someone uses that to gain access to a female? But the thing is, it's not whether you're attracted or not. I think where she's coming from. What if my daughter goes into a 16-year-old goes into a washroom and a male comes up and says, "I'm not a man. I am." Woman, but he's not, right? That's
Yeah.
what she's trying to ask. He's not, so he's now entering to
Right.
make fun
Apart
of
from
false
that, though, I think we speak about human rights. We speak about equal rights. We speak about everybody being able to express themselves and being respectful. At the same time, we need to be mindful of the other people. A girl washing her face, a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a guy strolls in. It might make her heart race a little because she might not know intentions. She might not know how do I, a female, defend against a man. So at the same time, we need to have discourse and respectful discourse about how both ends of the spectrum feel.
So I think that's
Right.
where Joel came in to say that the washroom stalls now, it need not to be, you know how when you go into the theater, you go into the mall, it's like the one door and you go straight down and then they go like the whole row.
But
I
how
think
does that,
they need to change it up and
in
make just
public
like
places
one
where you have to
stall.
accommodate large
hundreds of people, like
how are you
airports.
going to have single stalls? for-
unisex bathroom then.
Right, with how many stalls inside?
It's happening all over the world. I'm not a bathroom engineer, but it's doable. And it's doable. And it's happening all over the world. And, this bathroom issue is really a storm in a teacup because people think up of all of these different form of permutations of things that could happen and so on. And there are no reports out there, Canada, everywhere else that's progressing, Europe and so on, that of pedophiles using the gender neutral bathrooms or whatever the case is to penetrate it and commit sexual violence against children and so on. The reality is, if we want to talk about pedophilia, the reality is most pedophiles are known to most persons. It's usually somebody in your family, somebody in a place of authority, your teacher, It's not a stranger off the streets.
And
That's a rarity.
and they're
people don't
also-
want to face that reality. It's not a boogeyman walking off the road, coming into a washroom. That's a rare case. Most of the
Jumpy
time,
man,
the
jumpy
pedophile
man.
is your stepfather, is the priest, is the teacher. That is the reality, Cassia, not the boogeyman. on the street.
And also I want to, that's a fabulous point. And I like when we talk about, I mean, it's very strange, the statement I'm about to say, that we like to talk about pedophilia, but I always like to make something very clear with people. homosexuality and LGBTQ does not equate pedophilia. And apparently in Ghana, this is like the belief. Majority, let's get this clear, people. Majority of pedophiles are heterosexual males most of the time. And when we do see women involved in pedophilia or like sex trafficking, they are also cisgendered females, heterosexuals. And there's tons of cases. And people, and especially women, get enraged when they find out a woman is involved in some child molestation. And I'm like, not surprised. Not surprised, because the women come in as the caregiver.
Yeah.
If you can't see the bunny ears, the caregiver. I don't know who's saying that.
right there.
Right there. Right? The caregiver, and like, it's your neighbor. And she's like, oh, watch the baby for me. There was a case like that about 3 to 2 years ago. I was in Barbados studying or whatever. And it was literally like a 1-year-old that they like harmed. And it was the neighbor was watching the child, and her boyfriend would come and tamper with this child and molest this child. It was a baby. And the mother didn't realize till, I know, I'm so sorry for the mothers in here. But like, it was the doing. It wasn't a gay man off the road coming down.
The boogie man.
No one, not someone coming straight out the pride parade like, hi, who are ya? Want some candy?
All right, psychologists, on that note, I mean, very soon we'll have to wrap up, but I would love to give both Riza Khan and Mr. Joel Simpson to our listeners out there, let them know a little bit about your involvement in your work and what you do here in Ghana as well. So you're already the microphone, Riza. I don't want to take it away from you.
Yes, I was just hollering into the thing. Oh, because that pedophilia thing get me real pissed off the other day.
It's okay, girl.
Right, right.
You could say the word already.
Right. So, let me know. 'Cause I already said vagina for the Right. So it's for those who have been listening and so forth. I am a counseling psychologist, and I work with SASOD. I also work at Mercy. I actually also have my own individual office in Queenstown. And so basically I do counseling services, psychological services. That can be individual therapy, group therapy, family therapy, corporate work, workshops. Next week I'm doing 2 workshops for the Ministry of Finance for their like health week. So I'll be talking about things like stress management and like interpersonal relations, like skills. And so it's quite diverse. Psychology is everywhere and everything. And so it's just a matter of like what your specialization in. I've worked with children. I have child clients right now. And so very diverse. Like I said, I worked in like a domestic violence shelter as well. So I have done trauma. So quite diverse.
I think that's cool that there are people progressively now having their kids go talk to a therapist, especially in Ghana. Before, like, I still think there's a stigma.
Yeah.
But I think that's cool.
Yeah, no, because they're trying to counter. That's what people need to understand. They're trying to counter what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years with them, because if your child's having issues now, it's inevitable that they're going to have potentially
And
issues,
it might triple or
and it's going to double
quadruple
and
in
triple.
size.
Exactly. So they're trying to be counterproductive from now, proactive now. So yeah, that's why we're getting, and also I'd like to say, and I think I said this last week when I came in, almost about just under half of my clients are males. I have lots of male clients who are coming in, and not necessarily, even though I work through SASOD, yes, there are gay men who come in and speak with me and so on, but a lot of the other half of those men are cis heterosexual males.
That's progressive.
I'm happy to hear that men are doing the work to heal trauma and heal themselves, because that's the new being tall. Let me tell you guys, going to counseling and getting healed from all the crap you got carrying around, that's being tall. That's the new height. So when you do that, so when you do that, we see you as about 7 feet tall. So do the work.
And before we move on to Joel, one question I have more for you, Riza, is, doing all of this kind of work and counseling and all, does it? Were you laughing like you don't know the question?
Because Daisy asked me the same question, I think.
Really? What was the question?
No, okay. How do I deal with it?
Yeah, like do you
Empathy,
Does it
sympathy
affect you
is-
too? Like yourself, like your mind there.
Like,
Are you still mentally stable?
Am I still there? Yeah, no. I'm as much as I'm still there.
I mean you. Listen,
It's
you.
like it's the first year, so
seem-
I'm still
you
okay.
seem
You know,
pretty
like
good to me right now.
ask this question to me in 5 years, and I might give you a different answer.
Hold on.
But I think for me, and like I'm going to talk about this next week and so on with like other public sector persons, is the concept of balance and the concept of self-care. Like I kind of shut off from many things by like 10 o'clock and so on. Like I don't check my messages from like, first of all, none of my clients have my personal WhatsApp. First and foremost, they don't have my WhatsApp. They don't have me on Facebook. No, they know. And I know why. Because boundaries are very important when you're taking on the burdens and emotional burdens, psychological burdens of people. And this is even as a friend. If you know that you have a friend who's very struggling with issues and stuff, you also have to have boundaries with those people as well, because it's like drowning and pulling persons down sometimes with you. So, and you're not equipped with that skills to know how to save them, right? So you also maybe kind of harmed or rubbed off in some way. So for me, I'm putting up that boundary so they don't rub off on me.
It's like in the airplane when it's going down, put the mask on you.
You
before you
first,
can
yeah.
help
Correct.
anybody else.
And so for me, I'm constantly doing a lot of introspection. I'm checking with myself.
counseling yourself.
Just
Have little pep
filtering.
talks.
That's good. Yes, I
would think so.
yes, counselors tend to have counselors, and I just sent a video from Katie Morton, which is one of my YouTubers that I watch a lot of, and she did put up a video like, is it okay for my counselor? Is it okay if my therapist has a therapist? And there was arguments for and against, but in the end, and I did send it to my cohort, like the cohort I graduated with, and they're like, thanks, Rise, we needed this to be reminded that you cannot pull from an empty well. As a psychologist, if I even have a cold, ask Joelle, sometimes I don't come, I'm like, nope, because last time I tried to have a cold and do therapy, I sneezed over like 2 of my clients, and I was like, I can't do this. I was like, this is not, like, because I'm not present. And I remember I got a call once from a new client. They're very adamant that they wanted to see me that day. And I said, ma'am, like, I am not taking clients today. I'm not feeling well. And I said, and then they said it again. And I said, I am not well. If I cannot focus, I cannot focus on what your child is saying. And it's just going to be a waste of time for everybody. And I mean, I said it in a nice way, but like people need to understand I'm still also human and stuff like that. So yeah, there are days that it's fun.
Good
and
to
not
know
so
you
days
guys are
it's
still humane.
Not so fun.
Humane qualities. All right. So, Joelle, for you, your organization, I'd love for you to give us a little insight, the listeners out there, and your involvement. And you're the founder for this organization as well. So, we'd love to know what you do and your involvement.
All right. So, Guyana Society Against Sexual Orientation Discrimination, SASO Guyana. We describe ourselves as a human rights movement and organization that's creating change, educating and serving communities to end discrimination based on sexuality and gender in Guyana. And tomorrow, we're on the eve of it. Tomorrow is our 16th anniversary. Oh, wow. So, yeah. 16 years, yeah. We've been around for a little while. We have 3 programs, which we call our 3H agenda. We have a human rights program, which is about advocating for particular policy and legal protections for people, and that people get justice if they ever experience a human rights violation. So we do a lot of work on trying to change the laws which discriminate against LGBT people, advocate for laws which would protect them from discrimination, especially in the workplace, and especially when accessing socioeconomic services like health and education and so on. That's our focus of our human rights program. And justice, like if you're a victim of a hate crime or discrimination on the job or that kind of thing and so on, you could come to us. And we have a part of that is about documenting the complaint. And then we have a pro bono legal aid program if you need an attorney to represent you in court or with an employer or other authority. We have
what you can do, what's in your power, because I think a lot of people don't know
their rights.
Yeah.
So that's a huge part of
don't
it.
know they have power for that.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, we work with vulnerable groups, including LGBTQ persons who, because they're vulnerable, they often can't afford these services in the private sector. So that's why we provide them pro bono. Our homophobia education program is what we're doing here. It's about educating key stakeholders about sexuality and gender. so that we can bring an end to homophobia, transphobia, biphobia, levelphobia, education.
And acceptance too, right?
Exactly. But we want to eliminate all of that stigma and that discrimination and then get acceptance and equal treatment and equal citizenship and so on. So we have a couple of stakeholders that we target every year. And you might have noticed in the press that we've been training police and we work with religious groups as well, try to get them on board, youth organizations, private sector, our list of stakeholders and priority stakeholders is always evolving every year. And then our third program, which is technically the program that RISA works under, is our human services program where we actually provide some of these services, like health services. Counseling is a mental health service. So that's one of the services that we provide. And there are a range of things. We are very interested in entrepreneurship and employment. So connecting people with access to training, and that sort of thing, capacity building and that kind of thing and so on. And we've had a few success stories of persons who we've facilitated to participate in externally run programs who've become entrepreneurs and photographers and things like that and have been able to lift themselves out of poverty in some ways. But because of the discrimination, people don't like to go to doctors, psychologists, and that sort of thing and so on. So where that happens, we try to provide some of the services. But we also, especially in the homophobia education program, working with those stakeholders to eliminate all of that stigma and discrimination and make the services more LGBTQ friendly and oriented and affirming, right? Like positive, like it's a good thing to be an LGBTQ person, just as it's a good thing to be straight, right? So you have to have spaces and services which affirm people, make them feel good about themselves. And we do a lot of fun stuff too, because this all sounds very serious. So on the fourth Saturday of every month, we have a monthly mixer and meeting. And we just use it as a space to update everybody about the work that we're doing. And it's a social, so people come out and they have drinks and they socialize and meet people and stuff like that. So that's happening on Saturday, June 22nd from 5 to 8 p.m. And our office is located at 203 Duncan Street in Lamahar Gardens. That's between Durabana Square and Eastern Highway. And you can get us on 225-7283. That's our office number. Or on cell and WhatsApp at +592 623 5155.
Okay, great. Sounds like you guys have been doing a lot. And 16 years, I did not realize you guys were around for that long. I do remember having an interview with you all sometime back on TVG, way back with Ashley John, and so I know that you guys have been around for a while, but 16 years is really quite some time, and I'm happy to hear you have your work cut out for you as well, and I think you're doing a great job. And just recently, the other day at the Humaniana, I was there. They had the gay pageant.
Right, Miss Diamond Infinity.
Miss Diamond Infinity. Were you guys a part, or this was a part of this?
So
in any way?
we're started as part of what's called the Ghana LGBT Coalition, which is made up of 3 groups. And our sister group, we call Ghana Trans United, GTU. They organize that Miss Diamond Infinity pageant. That's their signature event that they put on every year. And that was one of the activities that was held during the recently concluded Guyana Pride Festival. It just ended on Monday. Yeah,
there was a symposium, then there was a party, the pageant happened, and
the parade.
The parade was
we had a Creek Cooler Lime on Sunday. On Monday, we ended with our Pride Cinema
These
night.
are part of some of the fun things you guys do.
Some of the fun things, yes.
So I was there, and how many years now has it been?
The
around?
pageant feels like it's been around for at least 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
hosted by GTU. Somebody else used to do a pageant before, but it had a different branding.
The segment that I loved the most was the intelligence segment. I thought that the topics that they chose to discuss on was basically each of them chose something to bring awareness. So about transgender and issues, right? So I find that it's more of educational. I mean, doing it in the end. And whoever gets the title, do they do work in terms of like going out, reaching out to people, bringing awareness to?
They do. So a huge part of it is to be an ambassador in the trans community. And it's you mightn't see it so visible on a national scale because they're focused on their own community, which is an important place to start, I think, because there's still a lot of work to do in terms of empowerment because people have been marginalized so much. And when Raisa was talking about education, I think one of the issues, even before we get to the forums and all of that and the bathrooms and campus, is that because of transphobia, predominantly 90-something% of the trans person we know have either not completed school because they've faced bullying and discrimination in schools and they drop out. From this time they start to transition during those high school years and want to wear, if they were born assigned male at birth and want to wear the schoolgirl's uniform or ribbons in the hair and that kind of thing and so on.
Okay.
They face that kind of bullying and violence. It's not just a call name, right? It's actual violence. And we've documented cases where teachers, headmistresses and so on are involved in the violence.
Do y'all ever, I don't know which organization, but do y'all ever go to schools and have discourse with people and
so we
with students as well as faculty?
Yeah, so we work very closely, and SASOT has a seat on the board, an organizational seat on the board of the Ghana Responsible Parenthood Association, GRPA. So through that partnership and through that relationship, we work on what's called comprehensive sexuality education in schools. And we work along with them to go into schools to do sessions on sexuality, gender as part of a broader curriculum that they do on sexual and reproductive health and rights, where they talk to young people about
biology, I guess.
HIV, gender-based violence, STDs. It's supposed to be this kind of life skills type of education. So
I think it's important to broaden that from there so that when they go out into the working world or into real life, it's not like a shock.
And even accepting probably their peers who can identify with those issues instead of judging or bullying them.
Or being totally unaware and don't know what to say and put their foot in their mouth about lots of things.
I find the sessions, I think education is a solution to all of this kind of stigma, discrimination, and so on. And if we could proliferate the country with education, this would be a non-issue. And we got to start with young people because young people could be very mean, especially when they don't know about something.
And their brain is malleable. So
Exactly, as opposed to old dogs who you can't teach any new tricks.
We can straighten up the tree because
don't break it.
Don't break it. Because we want to pick some fruits and flowers from that tree. All right, good. So I think we really had a great discussion. And what I loved about this show, me personally, we were nervous to get in here to get all the thoughts on, but I thought it was a really nice flow. And being aware of certain things and being more comfortable to express, and even maybe if we're asked a question, how now that we have real genuine thoughts, because sometimes you go wrong and you may just give an opinion or you share something.
Everybody wants to say the PC thing.
Yeah.
And I think that perpetuates ignorance.
Yeah.
Because there needs to be somebody to be like, hey, I don't get that part. I don't understand. Could you explain it to me?
Yeah.
That's important.
So that's what we try to do this evening for you all here in the Ladies Lounge. And we want to say thank you as well for, keeping us in your homes for the extra 30 minutes today. But we're happy. I think the conversation really did go well. Usually we would have breaks on the show. We'd had a single break.
Music. Oh my God.
But that's okay. I'm sure the listeners didn't mind. Every single thing that was said, it's all educational, knowledgeable.
And important.
And we're happy to have Joel Simpson here. And,
thank you guys.
And Riza Khan.
Educating us.
Thank you for having us.
And this is what you guys do best. So this is your thing, like devil's advocate. What's going on over there?
No, it's not. I was not his advocate today. He was not going to use me today.
I played the role. And it was solely Cassia.
All right. So that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us once again here at the Ladies Lounge. We'll be back with you next week, Thursday, same time, same place. We don't promise you we're not going to go over the time, though. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Business Grow.
Mega 102.1. Bigger than radio.
Applications are invited from suitably qualified persons to fill the following positions at the Guyana Water Incorporated: Assistant Accountant within the Finance Department, System Network Administrator within the Information and Communication Technology Department, and Plant Operators within the Operations Department in